Hi everyone, my name is Renee Wong. I'm the founder of Wild Women Tribe, a group that makes transformational experiences and connections for women outdoors. Here on Ignite Podcast, in partnership with Park City TV, we're sitting down with some amazing and inspirational women in the community to talk about things that matter. So I'm excited today to talk to Whitney Kozlowski of Beau and Locke Hughes, who is a wellness and health writer and coach, about the topic of identity, which is a pretty big topic, and one that I think a lot of us don't really give a lot of thought to. You know, you go to a cocktail party and someone says to you, what do you do? And you just kind of have like your one-liner, a couple sentencer that you spill out. Right. But when it comes down to it, you know, there's so much more complex to who we are. And furthermore, why do we need to be put inside of a certain box, you know, to kind of fit into society? Do you have any thoughts on identity that you want to share?
I mean, I definitely don't have that one-liner for cocktail parties anymore. I do so many different things and have so many different jobs right now as a freelance journalist that I don't even know how to describe myself. But, you know, I think it's okay. I think it's a positive thing that we have so many different identities these days.
And I think it's neat in Park City specifically. I think when people ask that question, they actually don't sometimes mean what do you do for work. They mean, like, do you like to go outside? Do you like to hike? Do you like to ski? Do you like to mountain bike? Do you like to run? All that. How do you like to play? I think is maybe the question sometimes in Park City thereafter. And I find that really refreshing. We moved here from California, so I've loved that about Park City.
And I think this community in particular has that really exciting feel to lots of people doing lots of different things and drawn by lifestyle and that commonality with people who are just kind of like jack of all trades with lots of interests and passions. Can you talk a little bit about historically in like the span of you as a person, like how identity has played into it? Have you always liked to define yourself in different ways?
I can take it. Well, let's see. Now I would say I'm 41 years old, and ever since I was little, I would always love to try different things. I was always a curious kid. I would always love to see how things worked, what I could do if I had an idea. And my parents could probably attest to this. I would say, okay, well, I can just figure it out. I see it. Maybe I can make it. Maybe I can put it together. Maybe there's other people that would want to do it with me. And that would go from anything from play dates to different plays that we'd put on to different, you know, things at school to different things as I got older. If I was working, things at my job, I was always kind of a Pied Piper that always had ideas. And it was always just something that I felt nudged to. If I thought of something, I'd want to try it. I'd want to do it. I kind of had this feeling that life loves the liver of it, right? And if you're out kind of trying to just go and experience things, you've got more to say in this world. You've got more to talk about. You've got more to share with others. So I think for me, I've loved evolving and really trying to narrow in what skills I've kind of picked up and things and passions that I have and try to really blend them into things. And if it's everything from my family to my friends to now all of my community pursuits and my business and things that really matter, like those things I think create an identity that really is based on me just really trying to contribute to life and be somebody that loves to live it and be around people that love to live it too. And so I find those people and I love on those people, and those people make me better. And so I feel compelled to kind of give back and contribute back.
That's awesome.
I love that, what you said, like being around people who love to live life. And also sort of, it's interesting that you go back to your childhood as well, because that's sort of what I thought about when I started thinking about identity is I grew up an only child. So it was a little different because I was by myself a lot of the time, but I think that that did help me form a sense of identity when I was really little. And I knew what I liked when I was little. I actually loved school. I was definitely a nerd, but that's okay. And then I also loved like being outside with my friends and playing sports and animals. But then it's funny, I was also thinking sort of how in college in my early 20s, I sort of lost my sense of identity. I feel like there's this pressure that comes when we're sort of thrown into this, real world that I sort of lost track of what I really wanted and who I really am, and in an effort to sort of like fit in with everybody else in college and then in my early 20s. And I feel like now I'm 30 and I feel like I'm back to myself again, and it feels so good. And I don't regret sort of like losing myself at some points. I think it's something we all have to go through, but
Yes.
I definitely feel like I'm living the life that I want to live now, which feels really good.
No, it's amazing. And I feel like there was a huge pressure that I put on myself, to have my identity fit in with what's expected. And towards the end of my marriage, I'm divorced, it was definitely a loss of identity. I mean, I had no idea who I was. And it's that weird feeling of like, kind of being an extra in your own life where you're like, I'm going through the motions and it looks like good on paper, and I kind of fit in with what everyone else seems like they're doing as well. But inside, like, I was getting up in the morning and going, okay, I just have to make it through the day. And when you are at that point, it can be really isolating and really like you kind of feel numb out of the rest of your life. And so for me, I guess.
What would pull you out of that?
Well, I mean, the catalyst was, I was unhappy where I was,
right.
and then inevitably we got divorced, and I think that took away a lot of the excuses. I no longer had like a situation that I could blame for my unhappiness, and so that kind of thrust me out there.
Right.
And I remember, we sat down, I was just talking before we came on, about when I was transitioning between jobs, and Whitney and I had met when I first moved here at a park. It was like, what you did when your kids were like 3 or 4 years old, and we had just moved here, and I was new to town, and you were pregnant with your second, and you were just teaching at the time those very early mommy and me classes, right?
Right. It was a totally different, no kids kind of class. And then I went on to teach Power Hour.
Yeah.
Yes. So it all kind of happened at once.
So you were one of the first people I met. But I remember it was maybe 5 years ago. I was kind of transitioning between jobs, and I called up Whit. And I'm like, I just need like a little bit of guidance. And you were so great about saying, you just gotta do you, right? Like you can't ever listen to someone else say, hey, this might be good for you, or why don't you try that on. You just have to like dig deep and really find like your purpose and what lights you up.
Right.
And I think that's really like one of the keys.
That's the biggest lesson that I think I've learned in my 20s is that only you are responsible for your happiness.
Was there a catalyst? Was there something that happened?
I think I sort of had the same tendency to like blame. Like I was living in New York for 6 years, and toward the end of that time I was feeling really run down. I was like, oh, it's a city, it's the chaos of the city and this crazy lifestyle, whereas it was my fault. Like it's almost like you have to take responsibility. Like I wasn't taking care of myself. Like we can get into this later, but health and wellness has become such a big part of my life because I realized that is a huge part of who I am, and it's helps you get back to who you are. But then I kind of listened to other people say, well, why don't you move to a new city? So I did. I tried a different city first in the South, and that was not me either. And it sort of hit me when I was living there and still unhappy. Like, it's not the city's fault. It's not, your environment's fault. It's you. And so then I took control of what I wanted to do and moved out to Park City about a year ago. And it feels so much more in alignment with who I am. And so just like listening to yourself is so important, and really taking responsibility for your own life is so key.
Were you going to add something about that?
Well, I was just going to say, I'm so glad you moved out here. Right? This is a very special place.
It really is.
I think on what she said, we say this a lot. You are the CEO of your own life. You get to choose your hires. You get to choose how you work. You get to choose what stays and what goes, and you're truly the architect of it. So you design it how you want, and sometimes listening to those nudges or keeping track of things that feel good or that maybe don't anymore, and being able to be confident enough to act on that. Sometimes I think that's a holdup in different decades, right? In the 20s and the 30s, and I'm in my 40s now, and it is different, but I think being able to act on those feels of what actually kind of chasing the light of what feels good, and then identifying like, you know what, I don't know that I love this anymore. And I'm not going to wait for somebody to make that change for me. I actually am going to get excited to make that change. So I love stories like that because it is like taking on that ownership and saying, I only have one life.
Yes.
And the clock is ticking and the time is going to go by. So
that's another quote.
Do I let life happen to me or do I go out and happen to it?
Yeah.
And was there a moment when that kind of occurred to you?
For me, you know, I've had a really serendipitous, lucky life. A lot of people, like I've had things and I've just trusted the universe. And the universe has been really good to me where I just have been in situations and found myself on life's path just at that moment. Maybe it's being open to it sometimes. And if anybody listening is like, I just don't have those moments, maybe try to open up a little bit because I really do believe they're there and the universe is always pulling for you and always working for you. You just have to be open to it. So I've been open to things ever since, gosh, I was a teenager. Little things of, you know, that happens like even like every time I get in line somewhere, a big line forms right behind me all the time. This still happens. I'm 41. I noticed this when I was like 12, right? I go to the market to do something. Anyways, I just feel like there's these nudges that if you're open to it and able to respond, and like I said, that just this luck and being in the right place in the right time and this serendipity that I've experienced, I feel a debt of gratitude for because I did act on it and it did work out well for me. Not always, like I've had setbacks for sure, and I've had heartbreak and I've had disappointments, but I've been able to kind of let them nudge me somewhere I should be. I feel 100% that I should be in Park City, Utah, and it's the coolest, most random story as to why. And it's probably a podcast for another time. But those types of things, I grew up in Arizona, and then I loved living at the beach. I was a beach kid. So, but I think being able to identify that the universe is nudging you a certain way, and you go for it, and it's risky, and it's scary, but sometimes, and I could always feel this, it felt right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree, but I think that I've misinterpreted the whole like listen to the universe or listen to yourself as an excuse to not take any action.
Yeah.
And then I realized like you have to also take action when you get these, when you're in a place and you're waiting for these signs. Like if you're just sitting in your apartment all the time by yourself, nothing is gonna happen.
Hard to make stuff happen.
So I feel like people hear this like listen to your listen to your intuition or like let the universe guide you, but it makes people a little maybe less likely to take action.
Right.
And because taking action is so difficult. But like when I was at a point in Atlanta where I was just like sitting in my apartment a lot. And I think, who was it? Somebody told me like, you gotta make a change. Like you gotta make a change. Yes. Like do you need a like eviction to make you leave here? Like you're just sitting here and like not happy, and it's up to you to sort of listen to that universe or listen to that intuition and make a change.
Right.
So what did you do
so
in that moment then? Because I want people to see kind of and get inspired by our stories, but then also to know that hardship happens and you kind of hit a wall sometimes.
Right.
And like, what do you do when you're there? You know, so did you start leaving your apartment? Did you start looking for mountain towns?
I mean,
how did you come here?
I was in Park City for a work trip and really fell in love with it and felt something and sort of felt the universe maybe nudging me. Like I remember being like going to the airport and just like starting to cry because I was like, I don't want to leave this amazing place. And then a month later, I came back out, and that was sort of thanks to somebody I had met on the work trip, and she said she had an apartment that I could stay in for a little while inexpensively, and so I packed up my apartment, put everything in storage, where it actually still is in storage in Atlanta. Got to get that back sometime. And just came out here with a couple suitcases and without really knowing anybody. And who knows how long I'll be here. I mean, I love it here so much, but it's been like the best decision. And immediately I felt a change in myself, in my health, in my happiness. So
because you listened to the little intuition, the voice that said you need to try something.
And made a change, and stopped listening to what everybody else
made a change.
Yeah, actively made a change. Right. And it wasn't like, oh, well, I should move to Atlanta because that's what people from where I'm from do. You know, I feel like that's a lot of what people kind of fall into in their 20s is like, everybody else is doing this, so I guess I should follow the crowd and do X or Y. But yeah, listening to yourself and just taking a risk.
Yep.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit about this, but do you have things that kind of are checks and balances that keep you centered in yourself, where you're like, that's a yes, that's a no, like it keeps me sane, you really know yourself to a certain point?
I'm definitely still working on that.
Yeah.
It's something that I definitely struggle with, like sometimes making decisions for sure. But I think that was a question that you asked us earlier, and one thing that definitely stood out for me was how doing something that's not in alignment with myself manifests physically for me. Like when I was living in that city where I wasn't happy, I was gaining weight, I had major digestive issues, I was exhausted all the time. Like it was a physical manifestation of sort of stress and anxiety over the future. And I feel like whenever I start to get really run down physically, or I don't have the energy to go work out, then I feel like that's a big sign that something needs to shift or change for me.
Yeah, I think it's physical for me too. I'm more emotional about it. Like it'll just not feel good.
Right.
And if and in the past I used to push through it, and I used to just say, oh well, I'll just do it. I'll kind of suck it up or whatever, bury it. Yeah. And then it would create resentment. It would just, it would come out in all these other emotional ways, anxiety, things like that. And so I find myself really just checking like situations, if there's like a party where I know a lot of people and I should go and it'd be great networking. If I don't want to go and I'll really kind of check in, then I just won't. And I think like not making excuses is also super huge that I've learned within the last couple years, being able to say like no and not have to say why and explain yourself. Because I think as women or just people in general, we tend to kind of quote unquote feel bad if we're not approving or like working into other people's approval.
What about you? Well, I think for a long time, I guess maybe since I have had kids, maybe when my second one came around, I started to notice that I would say yes to things, and then they'd come up, and I'm like, I actually don't really feel like going to this, or I can't, or it's just, man, it's a juggle to get. And now I'm making my kids go do something that I maybe don't even want to do, and now they're rushing out of the house. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? So I started to identify, and I use it probably across the board, and I'm like very like happy with this, that I like a no for me, it really is a yes to something else. And I think when I could get that straight in my mind, that guilt goes away. And I really started to want that the people or the things or the time or the whatever it was that was getting a yes for me because I said no to something else, I wanted them to know that, right? Like that they were taking priority, and a no to something that it probably even sounded great, but I just could tell with how my life framework was that I wasn't going to be able to deliver myself the right way there. So it would be a no. And that made it so it was a yes to so many other things. And that has kept me in check, I'd say, probably as a mom better than a lot of other things that I've tried to fold in as habit, but just really maybe undersubscribing to some things, or not, overcommitting. We all talk about that. Like nobody wants to be overcommitted, right? I've always had this thing where people will just say, oh, I'm so busy. And I am like, who made that? So cool.
It's a badge of honor now.
Yeah, right.
So I really actually don't use that word, and I have fun trying to find different adjectives when people ask how I am or what I'm doing or how's life. I would challenge anybody, just shift that mindset, just try a different adjective and see what happens, and but then notice how many people use busy as a answer to
but it's such
how
a negative word,
it's
right?
So
it's like my life is rolling. It was like a snowball rolling down a hill that I have no control over, and it's just full of stuff that
I've totally tried to shift my language in the exact same way. Like, I mean, I've just been recovering from surgery, and so a lot of people are asking about that, but I'm good. Like, life is so good. So when people ask me how my knee is, rather than being like, well, like last week I had some pain, or like blah, 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 like I'm just like, I'm good. Like I'm doing most of the things that I love to do. And I try to do the same thing.
I think it's like, I mean, and technically on paper and out, like we are really busy. Technically, right?
but
it's a lot of stuff that we get to do. Like I am so excited every day for so many things that I get to do that people would say, well, I would look at your schedule and this is all the stuff you have to do today. And I'm like, I get to do all of this stuff. So I think sometimes and I love seeing the JOMO coming out, the joy of missing out, and that is becoming
instead of the FOMO.
Right, I think people
definitely
kind
becoming
of,
a
I
thing.
mean, once people are out of their houses, it's work. Like, and I think there's a real drive to be able to be back home and to get back to that world. So,
And for people who don't know Whitney, she's a word master.
Oh,
so the
well,
Jomo.
thank you.
Did you invent that?
No, it is not me at all. I do love wordplay, but that's not me at all. I was just really proud of whoever came up with that, and that is circulating.
Yeah.
And
the
I hope
FOMO
people
is
catch on to that.
fear of missing out, but
And I think
replace
it's
that with
also-
joy.
Mhm. Yes, joy of missing out, which I think is really catching on also in the wellness world because of this whole self-care movement.
Yes.
Like there's it's a newsletter for women called Girls Night In, and it's all about sort of how to take care of yourself on the weekend, because I think that people have started to realize, which makes me so happy, because I did not realize this in my early 20s, is like it's okay to stay in on the weekend, and it's probably what you need after working hard during the week to like stay in, cook dinner with a friend rather than go out and take shots at a bar. And it's become such a movement.
She said what she said.
It's become such
I
a
mean,
movement
but
that
I don't know. There's a
see.
time for everything.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing that I've definitely learned over the course of my 20s is like, I'm an introvert, but I'm also a really social person. So I guess like an extroverted introvert is what they call it. And I like to go out, I like to meet new people, but then I also need my alone time. And I've realized over the past couple of years that that's okay, and it's important and it's necessary, all in the name of, self-care.
Right.
Self-care doesn't mean taking a bubble bath and like putting on face masks, although it can be.
Not
But it
to
just
you,
means-
yeah.
it just means whatever you need at that time, which
And I think that's so great. If you can get to a point where you enjoy your own company, that's a great place to be.
Because then people will enjoy you all the more because
Well,
you're settled within yourself.
And like having time on your own, like if you enjoy your own company, you've gotten to that place, like that's a great place to be, I think.
I
Do you
used to
think it
travel alone.
took you guys some time to get there?
It does, yeah.
I think being a
That's it,
mom, and that
yes.
was something that I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you, but being a mom kind of shifts things. Like for so many years when your babies are really little, like they truly do need you. You need to be there all the time, but then it's very easy to like become this identityless mom. You're just mom, and so for me, it's been an emergence into like, okay, well, my kids aren't in diapers anymore. They know how to get to school on
The
their
next
own. It's
chapter.
just like the next
Yeah.
chapter and tapping in to find the things that
Yes.
bring me the joy and
Right.
that make me light up. So yeah, it's been
Yeah.
kind of this evolution of like momdom, but then like, oh well, I'm not just mom. Like I'm
Right.
so many other things that light me up and that make me feel fulfilled.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
It's hard to
So-
find yourself as
Yes.
a mom.
But even just doing, like, you're at a time right now in your work, like, there's so much about the emotional wellness and taking time. Like, that, we never had that. Like, this is good for you, I think, in your group, like, kind of that sect growing up now. Like, the buzzwords now, like, that was never really around.
Self-care.
So
Yeah, that's such a
I'm
buzzword.
excited to
Self-love.
see
It is
how,
interesting.
and we run the barn, and we see so many demographics of if it's millennials, if it's new moms, if it's moms that have been at it for a while, and then if it's next phase moms where the kids are grown and they're looking for what they can contribute to or where they can work or what was it that they loved and who were they before kids came into it. So it's really been neat to watch all of those people say, I actually want to make sure I take care of myself so that I'm better to feed into every other group that I am kind of a part of. So I think you've got like a little advantage, I think. I think it's
for sure.
good.
Yeah.
I don't know that so much light was shed on it when we were in the
No, I
throes
feel
of
like
motherhood.
I am just, the last couple years,
Yeah.
it was kind of like this revelation.
I
like,
think it's
wait a
been
minute, I have to
like a
take care of
revolution.
myself.
Yeah.
Aren't I done? Like, I'm fully formed, right?
Yeah.
And then
No.
realizing, like,
No.
no, it's
Yeah.
a constant evolution. And I was going to ask you, Whitney, like, as a mom, how does that sense of
Yes.
identity play into, the lessons you share with your kids?
Well, I feel like I'm just getting started because my kids, of course, it's been like I have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 5-year-old. And now they're at ages where the engagement's so different, and those moms that are out there that have kids that are just, need them all the time, it changes. And now there's so much that you can contribute to their world and conversations that can happen and the takeaways. And you're really, as a parent, you're really just raising these humans to just be as good as they can be and to create a legacy for yourself. And really, if that's the to-do list. And so the engagement, I feel right now, this is my first year that all of my kids go to school, and then I get them all back in the afternoon. And that's so different for me, because it was always just kind of running around and juggling everything and making sure they're dropped off and picked up. But we run pretty lean schedules. They're not in tons of stuff, and they are around, and my family unit is expanded. My husband's family lives out here. And so it's always like a big village of like where kids are everywhere, and they're getting to do different things that was not my normal. Like as I grew up, I had a family of 5, and it was just us, and it was my parents and my brothers, and that was it. I didn't really know cousins. I didn't really know. But now watching my kids have a relationship with their grandparents, with their aunt, with their cousins, like I think I am just so happy now to contribute and engage with them in a different way. And it's shifted from then, just having to kind of follow them around and make sure that all their needs are taken care of. They now are actually adding a lot of to the conversation and to the world and to our daily world. So it's a little bit different now, and I'm like it. I feel like I couldn't remember much before I was 5 years old. I feel like they didn't, so there's this big. Now I feel like they can remember everything, and I feel like I am trying harder now. Because it matters. Yes.
So remember this.
Yeah, but you know what? We're all just trying to matter, and we don't get it right. And this is my first time parenting, and I just try to surround myself with people that help me be better at it. Truly. And my husband's phenomenal, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's just, and I've got great people of all ages around me every day of the week at that barn, and I depend on that so much, and I love that so much, because it's helped me be a better person, a better mom, for sure.
And it feeds you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, these people and how they feed me is amazing. They take such good care of me, so it's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, and Locke, I wanted to ask you, so since moving here, how have you found your identity kind of blossom? You wrote kind of a blog post on Instagram a couple days ago that was really timely, and it talked about identity, and I think you said, I contain multitudes. Like, I loved that phrase.
Which is a quote from Walt Whitman.
Okay.
That's not
But you quoted Walt.
But yeah, I think, so I just got back from a trip over to Europe where I have some family and a friend's wedding, and I was over there for a while in big cities like Oslo and London. And then coming back to Park City, I was thinking a lot. And also I moved from New York City to Park City. And I have these sort of two sides of myself. There's like a duality within me, I feel like. I love the big city, the energy, the culture, all the opportunities, all the people. But and then my life in Park City is also wonderful in its own way. I remember moving out here and literally having a hiking trail right out my back door was just such a novel experience for me, and it was incredible. And I felt an energy, a different type of energy here, a different energy than New York or London. And I feel like I've sort of been wondering how to, which direction to take. Should I maybe move back to a big city, or am I gonna stay here? Or I felt like I have to choose. And I guess sort of recently I realized that it's okay to have these two different sides of myself. And it's okay to maybe, and especially in today's world where I'm freelance, I can travel, I can go to all these different places and sort of fulfill and feed these different sides of myself. And that's been sort of a cool thing to realize, and it's okay to have different sort of dualities, I guess, within yourself. And obviously I'm in a place in my life, I'm not a mom, not married, where I do have the luxury of being able to move around. So I guess I'm just trying to take advantage of it.
That's a great thing.
Yes. But I will say,
get excited about that.
Oh, I am very excited. I love it. But I will say, speaking of your community at the barn, the Beau Collective, that is something that I think is also so important in life, because I have found that I'm actually spending a lot of time alone still. I am often alone in my apartment because I work from home as well.
Yes.
And that's also so cool that you guys have created a community of people to come together, especially through fitness, which I love. I love working out. But it's still hard to even find a community these days. People are like, oh, go to your yoga studio, make friends. No, people are in and out of yoga studios, and I think it's so cool that you guys have really created a place for people of all ages, whether you're like me or older or a parent. So I think that's a really important part of identity as well.
And I think people need people, even in this time where you can do anything from your phone and you can work solo and stuff. There's just something about showing up somewhere and having other people. You just, like, it can't be underestimated, the impact that people can have on you and you can have on them. And most of the time you actually don't know it's happening. That's what we see a lot. Some people will be like, you know what, I just had the crappiest day. I wasn't going to say anything, but now that it's been turned around totally, I'm going to tell you. It's only because of that person. I don't even know who she is.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And so we see that
so
type
cool.
of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where you were saying, like, sometimes I just get in my head and I just, and sometimes you just
need people.
don't know the impact that people can actually have. So in this day of technology and being able to do everything virtually, I will oversubscribe to people needing people and just that touch and that in person. That's I have a business model that's built on that, but I also have a heart model that is built on that. I need it. I want it. I've been around for a while, and I see others as well. I feel like we are just better together, and I think that identity for us as a collective, there's power in that.
Well, and I think you're touching upon something like individual identity, you know, it starts with you, but then collective identity is what powers the world, right? Like,
truly.
We're only as good as the community that surrounds us and the family that we call family, right? So it's like this dual kind of nature of having to do the work for yourself on your own, but then sharing and creating the community and connection with other people, which is what communities like the Beau Collective do, and you know what I'm aspiring to do with Wild Women Tribe as well.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like you bring people together around a positive notion, and your identity is a reflection of that.
Yeah, I met so many great girls on the Wild Women Tribe event at the Beau Collective. I mean, like, really some of my good friends now. I mean, it's just so cool to come to, and I had only been in Park City for probably about 6 months at that point, and it's just so fun to come together and meet people with similar interests, but in a non-cheesy way too. You know, I feel like so many networking events can get a little, I don't know, disingenuous, but yeah, I've been, but also I think social media isn't necessarily the worst. I think it's not great overall, but it can also bring people together in interesting ways. That's actually how I met one of the girls that I went on the event with. Is through social media originally.
But
cool. Then, so it's like a cool way to like make that original connection.
As long as it's not your everything.
Yes, as long as it's not the only way you interact with people.
Well, I wanted to thank you guys both for coming in.
Thank you.
Yeah,
this was really fun.
A topic that I think really matters, you know, and I think just being able to come together and say, hey, you know what, we're going to actually instantly dive into this. Just shows how depth-filled we are and how much we need the connection of talking about something that really matters. And so I wanted to invite you to also share your social media and how people can follow you or get in touch with you.
You go ahead, Locke.
Okay, you can follow me on Instagram at Locke Hughes, which is my first and last name, LOCKEHUGHES, and I post, like you were saying, some sort of like mini blog posts on my Instagram, and I'm also a health coach, so I do like to sort of share what I'm learning in life with people.
Awesome. And you can find us at on Instagram. Way more than Facebook, I'm just going to say it, right? The Beau Collective, and we love any engagement. We storytell on our social media. You can get a real feel for what happens at the barn.
And Beau is the name of your youngest daughter.
Yes, this is right. We just had, you know, we have a real estate company in town that's named after the older kids, and so I really, this was all kind of accidental, but yes, that's how the collective was named after her. And I would say maybe, I don't know, 20% of the collective now knows that. You know, they have no idea. So BOCO, as it's been nicknamed, we just love it. So life is beautiful. Yeah, for sure. So thank you so much. This is so neat, and good luck next weekend.
Thank you so much.
Right?
Yeah, we'll have, by the time this airs, we'll probably have completed our glamping retreat to Moab.
Well,
but
I know it was awesome.
There's lots in store for the summer. We have a whole bunch of wanders and partnerships with some amazing women-led businesses in town, and you can find more about Wild Women Tribe at wildwomentribe.net, and we're also on Facebook and Instagram. So thank you for tuning in to the Ignite podcast. Thank you to Park City TV for being our media partner, and we will see you next time.